covering the world, and we're talking about making history. The world keeps happening.
Yes, it does.
Isn't that something? And so, okay, so we are going to give the United States a little break. We're going to take a little vacation, not a real vacation. I mean, we're going to talk about some other places in the world. And hey, Pasha. Okay, there's my little brother right there. The best. I watch him on YouTube. So, okay, we talk a lot about the Democratic Republic of Congo here, and we have been following the supposed Democratic Republic of Congo for a while, and I've been saying that they are supposed to be having election, and I've been, and I follow the Democratic Republic of Congo closely because my big project, Justice for Hammarskjöld, and Doug Hammarskjöld, the second Secretary General of the United Nations, was killed trying to make peace in Congo, and this was in 1963, and 1961. And so that's why I follow it so closely. And since independence from Belgium in 1960, Congo has never had a peaceful transfer of power. And the person that ruled Congo for a long time was General Mobutu, and we particularly know him in the United States because when Congo was called Zaire, Rumble in the Jungle was there. So,
Rumble, young man, rumble.
yeah, and so the current president of Congo is Joseph Kabila, and he has been in office since the year 2000 when his father, Laurent Kabila, was assassinated. And so Kabila was supposed to step down in 2016, and the elections have been postponed, and and the other problem that's been happening in Congo was an Ebola outbreak, and so that was preventing voting from happening. And what we talked about last time was this was the first time that Congo was going to use electronic voting machines, and people were very distrustful about that for the very good reason that a lot of places in Congo don't have electricity. So then there was a fire in the warehouse that was holding, so a bunch of these electronic voting machines were destroyed. So there was supposed to be elections on December 23rd, and they were put off, and then there were elections on New Year's Eve, but the elections were shut down in an entire area of the country, which is an area where there is a lot of opposition to the candidate, to the president's candidate. Joseph Kabila's candidate is the ex-minister of the Interior, Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari. And so people were running against him, and one of the people running against him was named Martin Fayulu. And he was very interesting. I just watched an interview with him. He is from the part of the country where they shut down voting and blamed Ebola, and that was a part of the country that really supported him. And so Martin Fayulu is supported by the former DRC Vice President Jean-Pierre Bemba, who we have talked about before. He was under indictment by the International Criminal Court and was released. And so he was welcomed home, and people wanted him to run for office. So I guess a lot of Congolese don't believe that he committed war crimes. And so he is supporting Martin Fayulu. Hi Lawrence, we're talking about the elections in Democratic Republic of Congo and the opposition candidate named Martin Fayulu. And okay, so he was supported by Bemba, and he was also supported by Moise Katumbi. And Katumbi is very rich, so he has been and so Fayulu's campaigns have been marred by violence, with security forces using tear gas and live ammunition to disrupt his political rallies. And so I watched an interview with him, and he was pretty interesting. He was really slick and masterful, and he was asked about questions about financial irregularities, and it was kind of like, okay, well, why is Moise Katumbi part of your party because of his financial irregularities? And okay, so here's what I thought was pretty fucking brilliant. An issue with leaders, what all the leaders get asked. Emmanuel Mnangagwa has been asked that, like, okay, if you're elected, what are you gonna do about all the human rights abuses that have happened? Like, what about the human rights abuses committed by Jean-Pierre Bemba and by Katumbi as well? And so he was asked, if you're elected, what are you going to do? I mean, are you going to have a Truth and Reconciliation commission like that, like they had in South Africa, and like they've talked about whether they're going to do that in Ethiopia and in Zimbabwe. And he said, if we do something like that, he said, we will not do this for revenge. The government will not try and get revenge. And I was like, wow, that is really brilliant, because he gave himself an out. He gave himself a perfect out for not doing it, for saying, like, okay, if we go back and hold it, like, okay, you could view it as holding people accountable, or you could view it as revenge.
Right.
So what is it? And so I was kind of blown away by that, and just, he was very, very interested. And like, for example, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the former president of Liberia, was asked whether she was going to go after some of the Charles Taylor and the people that committed war crimes in Liberia, and she pretty much said that she had too much on her hands just trying to run the government. I mean, trying to keep things going. So basically, I follow the Democratic Republic of Congo very carefully. We play music from there. I have, connections because of Doug Hammarskjöld. And I mean, so what's happening right now is people are waiting to find out what the result is of the elections. And so, I mean, the Democratic Republic of Congo, I mean, it has my prayers and my hopes that people will have what they deserve to have. So, hopefully, okay, so we're hopefully back on schedule with every 2 weeks. So we will keep on following this, and I'm jumping a little bit because speaking of Liberia, we like the president of Liberia a lot here at the Global History Night. He is progressive. He's educated in peace studies, and he was a World Cup champion football player. And so I've decided that I am a fan of athletes running for office because athletes play to win. Okay, I really, really hate how much credence celebrities are given in the United States by the Democratic Party. Okay, and I actually went on Fox News. I called into Fox News Radio to talk about, after Kanye West was in the Oval Office, and I got to call Kanye West pathetic on national television. Oh shoot, I hope, okay. Sully, my friend who was watching, likes Kanye, but he's not on anymore. But I said, okay, I found, I was extremely alienated by the Obamas making such a big deal about celebrities, because I think people can make up their own minds. They agreed with me on that. Over at Fox, and okay, like Katy Perry, whatever, and okay, the fucking women's, it just seems like everywhere celebrities are constantly being interviewed and asked their opinions. And okay, I think I would be really interested. I think Colin Kaepernick should run for office. I think I would be he is somebody I would be very interested to hear his ideas, because to me, what he did, he came up with an idea and a mission, and he did it, and he made, and he fucking got slammed for it. But he inspired people. He made people keep going, and what he did, there was thought behind what he did. And he wasn't just, and athletes, yeah, I'm sure there's athletes that acclaim and stuff, but athletes are there to work. They're there to do a job. And okay, so we're talking about, okay, it's strategy. Okay, I think that, that is why, I think strategy. I think okay, don't give Trump $5 billion, give him $1 billion. That's negotiation. That's strategy. Okay, sports is strategy. And okay, so that's one of the reasons I felt that I like Timothy Way, because he was a champion footballer. Soccer for us people in the US. And okay, it turns out that his he's another one. Liberia has tremendous problems with corruption, and even Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, are a love. There were problems with her sons making money in the government. What they say is that it's sort of the good and bad things about people being very family oriented and having a very nice community and having a real tight sense of community. It's it's really hard if your relatives and your people have gone through so much suffering and you have an opportunity. It's a lot of pressure. So Timothy. Okay, yeah. So George Weah, the footballer's son, is named Timothy Weah, and so he also plays football, and he is also doing the World Championship. But he's on Team USA. I don't really understand that, and I was trying to see because I would does he go to college or? I mean, I was trying to see wait, well, how is he 18 years old and doing Team USA? Does he go to college here? Where does he go to college?
Right.
So, okay, so good luck to young Mr. Weah. And oh yeah, okay, we talked about this last time. They're having big problems. Oh, okay, well, yeah, the last problems we were having in Liberia was people ripping off electricity because it wasn't working. It wasn't that they minded paying for it. It just wasn't working. So
so how are they ripping it off?
Making, going out to hooking into the poles.
So, I mean, why was it working from the poles but not working to their house? I'm just curious.
I know, that's a damn good question. That's a damn good, I know. Well, okay, it's the same okay, now, this is what the conservatives would call the concept of having less government. Okay, do you, there's people who would just feel okay, don't let the government regulate electricity. We'll just deal with it ourselves.
Wow.
So, okay. In Sudan, there's been a lot of demonstrations, and it's been the biggest demonstrations ever in Sudan. Omar al-Bashir, the president of Sudan, has been in power for 40 years. He is wanted by the International Criminal Court. And so there's been people have been out demonstrating in the streets. There's a social media blackout, and okay, here's one of the reasons why everybody should watch Al Jazeera. They had, they do a show where they bring people on, and so they'll have the three little screens of people talking. They had an actual government minister from Sudan who went on the show, which is unusual, and a guy that just got out of jail, a protester, and an academic type person. I mean, they get real people in there, and they ask real difficult questions. With the other interview I was talking about with Fayulu, I mean, they asked him about war crimes. I wish we had U.S. journalists that were like the Al Jazeera journalists. So, I mean, it was something. The guy that just got out of jail was because the government minister was saying that there wasn't a social media blackout, and the protester was saying yes there is. Yes there is. I feel weird. This is very, very serious. It's hard to talk about. I don't know. It's we're talking about such serious news, but I feel I take it very seriously, but I do I don't know. I'm constantly just trying to balance that. I mean, a lot of the stuff we talk about is very, very sad. So, it is said that, the question is, are these protests going to be any different? Because there's been a lot of protests, and sanctions against Sudan were lifted in 2017, and things have not improved since then. So that is why people are saying that this that this may be different is because of sanctions being lifted. And so we are hoping that there will be. So Sudan, we are going to be following you, and whatever social media you get out, and man, Al Jazeera, keep getting these people on the fucking news, because we want to hear from them. And because okay, so speaking of the of news media, okay, so we're moving over to Nigeria, and there's been a lot of clashes between farmers and herders. The Nigerian soldiers have raided the main office of the private Daily Trust newspaper and confiscated computers, and that follows the arrest of some staff at the newspaper's office in the northeastern city, which is the epicenter of Boko Haram, and that is the fundamentalist terrorists in Nigeria. And a couple of years ago, there was a lot of attention from celebrities about girls being kidnapped from school, and so that got a lot of attention, and it keeps happening. Basically, they are still doing it. So what I can't figure out is, okay, the journalists are saying that they are being raided for reporting about the military preparing an operation to recapture territory. And so I'm not too clear about, okay, like putting it bluntly, okay, the newspaper bad guys or good guys? Okay, like, are they not, and that's a big issue with newspapers anyway, or like journalism or anything. Like, okay, were they reporting on this before it was going to happen, which would have tipped off Boko Haram? Were they trying to tip off Boko Haram? I don't know. And okay, so we're following that, and okay, in Zimbabwe, we're still following land compensation, and to white people whose land was taken in the 80s. And here at the global history club / historical book club, we do not think that they should get it back. We believe that if some of them are like blah blah blah. We bought this land after independence. It's ours. Well, like, no. I mean, your grandparents came in here and like ripped off the country and ravaged the country, and you were still taking advantage by coming back and doing this. And like, move the fuck on. It's been 40 years. And the problem with the land reclamation in Zimbabwe was that the people didn't benefit. All the land was compensated, but it just went to government figures, and rich people and the actual people in Zimbabwe didn't benefit from it. So that is the problem with land reclamation, is that it doesn't go to the right people. So that is still being covered. And so one of the white farmers was talking about what a great job he did with his farm. And so so some of these farms were really developed, and so then when they were people have had a hard time farming with them because the maintenance and all the machinery and stuff broke down. So he's like, blah blah blah. We did such a great job, and our farms were like doing so great. And so this Zimbabwean lady said, "You don't get credit for maintaining a car that you stole." So yeah, that kind of says it all. And okay, so we also follow Yemen, and which is one of the greatest which is the greatest humanitarian disaster in the world. There's famine, so and the U.S. got involved because our great friends the Saudis sell arms to the Yemeni, I get this backward, to the Yemeni government, and so back before the government shut down, the United States Congress had decided to pay some attention to Yemen and try to stop the arms sales. And okay, wow, that just kind of like all got forgotten about with the government shutdown. So so for me, you're just gonna some senators I really dislike were talking about it, and I was like, okay, 4 fucking years. And so there were talks in Sweden. A peace deal was made in Sweden. Both sides have been accused of violating the ceasefire agreement, and there is supposed to be a ceasefire at the port, just at the port, so that food can get in. Okay, that's like it. That's all that's being asked for now. Well, more, but that is still not. That's still not happened. We're still not too sure about that. And so, the United Nations Special Envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, is now heading to Jordan, to work on another peace deal. And so we are just, again, sending just all good wishes to Yemen. We were talking about Yemen. We were talking about Yemenis last time we were here. We were talking about Yemenis, and I was talking about my grandparents. Okay, we were talking about how Yemen Operation Magic Carpet, which was where a bunch of Yemenite Jews were brought to Israel in the 1950s, and how there was an issue of stolen children, of people being it's a huge problem. Now and at all times in refugee camps, kidnapping and trafficking is just is rampant. And so one of the things that happened, and so in the Yemeni community, I'm trying to figure out, I believe that it is still, because one of the things I was saying, wow, okay, I know my grandparents used to talk about the Yemenite Jews. Are we now supposed to say Yemeni? Is because language changes. So I have not found out about that yet, but one of the reasons it was interesting to me is because I'm an archivist, and so the issue was one of the issues is trying to open up archives of the State of Israel to find out about some of this stuff, because there's people that remember, like, wait, people were told that their kid died, but then they didn't get a body. And so this would happen to vulnerable communities, people that were refugees. And so what's interesting about that is with recent, this all happened recently. Okay, I mean, and so now some of these people are finding each other with DNA tests. And I've said before, I find DNA tests, I find genealogy just extremely uninteresting. I do not care where people were, where my like foreparents or whatever were 300 years ago or 3,000 years ago. And it's sort of weird. I'm interested in history. I'm interested in things that people do. And I'm interested in people's choices. So being interested in people's DNA, somebody's not interesting to me because they're like my 18th cousin or something like that. But in cases like this, it really makes a difference. I mean, people have literally found each other through these tests. And so, I wonder about it with, there's, I have a blended family, and there's younger members of my family, that were like that were adopted, and I was like, wow, for young people now, like, fuck opening up records, they can like do some DNA testing.
Right.
So that is, that's really weird. That is just really interesting. So that is something interesting about DNA testing. And my friend, if we get to plugging the Bayard Rustin Symposium, we might talk about a friend of mine who was different states have different laws about opening adoption records. And so one of the issues for my friend Fresh White is adoption records are closed in the state of New York, and he believes that they should be opened. And I do not, and because one of the reasons he feels that way is because so many disenfranchised women had kids taken from them. So, and people's records and history was stolen from them. And he actually thought, this was one of those like Facebook things and things of like, he was rather because I was asked to sign I was asked to sign a petition about it, and I said I wasn't going to, because I believe people have the right to not be found. I think that there should be, because there are mechanisms for people to find each other, I think it should be voluntary. I think that there's women that give up children and want to be anonymous, and I think that they should be, that they have that right, and that if it was a that now especially there's ways, if they want to put themselves out there, if these women want to go on registries or whatever and make themselves available to be found, they can. And so I don't think that should be forced. And So yeah, people were rather indignant with me about it, about it, and it was a very personal, and it was a very personal. It was not a conversation I wanted to have on Facebook. It was a deeply personal conversation. I feel that way about Holocaust reparations. Like, okay, there's people my age that this came up with people my age that want Holocaust reparations for what their grandparents and great grandparents suffered. And I don't believe in that. I think that my feeling was that there are organizations that if people need help, they should get help, and you shouldn't, and it shouldn't have to do with what was done to your grandparents. And like, say, okay, you're like, say, you're fine. You're like going along, you're living your life, you're fine. I don't think people should be able to be like, oh, hey, I can get some money because I can get money because my grandparents died in the Holocaust. I don't think it should work that way. And so there were people that had, and so the argument that people were having was that somebody was saying like, well, my parents had PTSD, and so I am traumatized because of my parents having PTSD. There is now evidence that PTSD is inherited. And so my attitude is, if you have there should be ways for you to get help for your PTSD, and I don't think that is the mechanism. I don't think.
Reparations.
Well, yes, and one of the things that happened after the Holocaust was there was a shitload of stuff done for Jews by other Jews. There was a shitload of stuff done, and so there was one of the people were helped to try and like get back on their feet, to try and like get a life, and to try and heal and recover. And so yes, and so that was for them, and people tried to do that. And so okay, that was like great grandparents and grandparents generation. And so now, okay, like you have problems, and like, okay, your grandparents' problems created problems for you, and reparations are like a whole, it's like a whole issue, with black people too, and with anybody that's, I feel that since, members of the Jewish community were in a position to help each other out, and they did, and continue to. So no, I don't think that it should not be because of need. Get help from your family, get help from current organizations. So yeah. So that was an issue, a conversation with somebody for whom it was very, very personal, and because for me, it was an abstract. It was a discussion. See, this is the thing that drives me crazy. For me, it was a discussion about, should this exist? Should things work this way? But some people can't separate it. For the person I was like, blah, 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 but I have PTSD and all of that. And I was just like, look, I completely support you getting help for your PTSD. You're my friend. Do whatever you want to do for your PTSD. And if a friend of mine is going to, or anybody, if a person is pursuing that has PTSD and is pursuing this avenue to try and get help with it, I will never condemn them, because that is, I'm not going to condemn how any individual takes care of themselves. I just feel that we should be able, to have a conversation. And this so we are kind of moving on a little bit. Let's take a real. No, I don't know if we really need to take. Okay, no, we can keep going. We're on a little bit of a roll here, because this was an issue that I was getting very, very cynical about. Okay, because my brother is he's an asbestos attorney. He works with asbestos victims, and so the way to get. Okay, so incidentally, if you know anybody that has asbestosis or that might get asbestos poison, asbestos cancer, I'll put you in touch with my brother, because so there's all sorts of different ways to sue people, and it's not just people are like, oh my God, there was this asbestos in this building, let me sue somebody. It's like, no. It's if you worked with asbestos, and that's the avenue. But it's not just people that worked with asbestos. It's their families, especially a lot of people that did have these jobs were men, and their wives did their laundry, and so a lot of mesothelioma is the kind of cancer you get from asbestos, and you only get it from asbestos. So a lot of like with cancer, some people get it, some people don't. So yeah, families got it. Like some women would get it because of washing their husband's clothes and inhaling the little particles and stuff. So they can sue people, but if you've worked with asbestos, you can, they also do lawsuits for if you might get it. So, man, I love the United States legal system, so they can get more and more. Okay, because oh man, see, I've been reading about a lot about Thurgood Marshall this week, and precedent. So God, see, I'm talking about a couple things at once. So one of the things my brother was able to do was, they sue companies that manufacture products, that manufacture equipment that's used with asbestos. So it's not even just the companies for whom you're that are using this stuff. It's people that make equipment that will be used to work with this stuff. So somebody was talking about lawsuits against train companies, French train companies that took Jews to the concentration camps. Like the train companies, whose trains were used to do that. So people were talking about that, and so thanks to so I was like, okay, well, fine. If they're going to do that, then they can go back and try and sue the manufacturers of the steel, of whatever the materials were that were used to make the trains that brought people to their death.
Oh Lord.
Yeah.
This sounds so frivolous and long and crazy.
Yeah. About the money. So, okay, and it's all about, because my brother doesn't take it that far, but I can't even. He's brilliant. He was telling me about because one of the cases he did, way back when he did this, when he was working on the case of suing a company that manufactured a product that was used with asbestos. I was like, wow, Matt, you've just opened up a whole new industry to sue. And he's like, yep. So, okay, jumping over to Thurgood Marshall, who I've been reading about this week, because we're gonna get to precedent, and Thurgood Marshall was just amazing, and so I've been on a little bit of a Thurgood Marshall trip this week, and so he's okay. So, and then I've talked before about the film I'm bringing. You don't have to ride Jim Crow, which is about a freedom ride that took place in 1947, and they did it to test an NAACP legal ruling, that the Interstate Commerce Clause, which ruled that Jim Crow seating could not be enforced on interstate commerce. And okay, we've talked about this before, and it has to do with the issue of states' rights versus the federal government. And I still don't really understand why states' rights are like, why do states' rights only come up with racism? Why are states' rights only used to defend racism? Like, don't they, if it's such a big, like, aren't there other aspects of states' rights? Okay. And there kind of are. Like, okay, an area where, and unfortunately, okay, like, it can come up with education, and, the idea, and, okay, like the Obamacare, that's a big example of state. It worked for some states and didn't work for some states. And so, having to do with how those particular states ran their affairs. And so, completely apart from the political issues for, like, which states liked Obama and which didn't. Like, for example, states have different tax structures. They run their program, they run social programs differently. And so the question is always like, okay, if the federal government makes a policy, is it going to work for everyone? And one of my other big interests, who I've been reading a lot about this week, is Francis Perkins. Okay, like the New Deal, and that was a big argument about the New Deal, and like the federal government passed, like, more broader laws. Okay, like, for example, like right now because like it was always a big issue, like, okay, workers' rights. Does the federal government have the right to enforce workers' rights? Okay, that's another big deal. And so, and so in 1946, it was ruled that it was an unfair burden to enforce Jim Crow seating on interstate bus transport. And when they challenged and it wasn't that it was an undue burden on the company. And Thurgood Marshall was so smart that, I mean, that's called precedent. That's called building a case.
Right.
They didn't do it. They weren't saying this is unjust, inhumane, and wrong. They were saying this is an undue burden on the companies. And so that was in 1946. And Bayard Rustin and his pals decided to go take a bus ride and test it out. And they thought, like, okay, well, let's. And so when they were told to get to the back of the bus, they would like explain. They would just try and talk to people and explain that, like, okay, well, we are now, the law now, it's now legal for us to be up here. And they'd say, well, what if we were they would say, like, well, what if we were a box of oranges? Does it make, you can't, like, insist on, like, moving things. So that was one of the things that Thurgood Marshall did. And there's a film about him. Did you see the film Marshall?
No, I didn't see it.
It's good.
It's a pretty good movie?
It is. I go back and forth about it in some respects because, well, I was reading this book and this is about, it's not that good. It's written in a really weird way. And it just jumps around a lot. And so it sort of started out describing the circumstances of these young people whose car got wrecked, and from there they wound up making false rape accusations. And so then it would like jump from there to Thurgood Marshall, and so then it would go back to like explaining about the 4 black men that were like picked up and like near beaten and forced to confess to something they didn't do. And then it would jump back to Marshall, and then it would jump back to these people, and I was like, wait, aren't we done with this yet? So it was a little confusing. And so I'm kind of reading parts of it, and I just watched a documentary about Thurgood Marshall, and I watched the film. And what was shown in the documentary, and what they said was, what they were trying to get across is just he was just extremely charismatic and magnetic, and just really trying to get across the force of his personality. And so he's played by Chadwick Boseman, so the Black Panther guy. Mm-hmm. And so he really, and one of my friends just thought that the guy, that he didn't look like Thurgood Marshall, and that he shouldn't be playing him. I think he kind of did. Okay. Well, this isn't. I think Thurgood Marshall had really amazing eyes, so I think his eyes really looked like him. But he was just trying to get across the charisma. So I think that's what Chadwick Boseman did a good job getting across, of just being, he was just somebody that could engage people and entertain people, and so he kind of got that across. He got that across, but then I read more about. But then I felt like it kind of, it kind of slacked, because I felt like he then. I thought the writing got kind of bad, and that they gave Marshall became like, he kind of became less interesting. There was this point where he was like saying like "fuck you," and I was like, Thurgood Marshall, would not have spoken like that. The guy was like erudite.
Right.
But I mean, one of the things, I liked that he got across the charisma of him, and I it was about a false rape case. And so I liked that. Oh, I think I did mention this once before. I mean, I liked that they took such a difficult, sensitive subject, and that you know, like the Kate Hudson played the woman, and you know, I mean, it takes guts to get up and play a false rape accuser, and so, I mean, I respect them for showing something so difficult. Whoa. Okay, so we will talk about more about precedent, because I'm on next time, because I'm on such a Thurgood Marshall roll. But yeah, so his principles for because one of I mean, he was really, the precedents were this was being done by Thurgood Marshall's mentor, Charles Hamilton Houston. And so Charles Hamilton Houston was starting to build the precedents. And so that's why the NAACP, the Legal Defense Fund, they didn't go around, they were really, they only defended people they believed were innocent. And so that was really, rough, because that's a rough decision, because there were people that, you know, were, you know, I mean, there were tons of African American people, you know, who, like, okay, maybe this person did commit this crime, but their rights were being denied. They did not, and so, but the NAACP they didn't take these cases, because that didn't, and it had to be, they only took cases where where the bad treatment was because of race. Like, it had to be, like, clearly defined. It had to be, like, super narrowed down, because that was how they were trying to build their case. So they had, like, really rough decisions to make. I mean, they had a lot of people coming to them for help that they were not able to help. Because it wouldn't have built, because they had to keep building these, they had to just do certain kinds of cases. So again, I mean, talk about, like, it's just an example to me of how, of how boring DNA analysis is, because, I mean, the choices people make are really interesting, and why people like Bayard Rustin are so interesting to me, because Bayard Rustin made really difficult and complex choices that people didn't agree with, and that's what Thurgood Marshall did, and it showed it in the film Marshall. It showed that side to him. I mean, it was that this particular case, it wasn't about, like, yeah, it wasn't about the individual person. I mean, it was, but he was making, the choice was about the precedent. I mean, he had to make the choice. He had to do the case because of that. And so, I mean, things were more complex for him than for everyone else. So, okay, real quick, what was it that you were having to say about Paul Walker?
Oh, you talking about the post I had about Paul Walker?
Yeah.
dating underage
Yeah.
girls.
So is that coming up because of R. Kelly?
Well, no, I saw it on someone else's post. Someone else. Actually, you know who posted it?
Who?
Age.
Oh, really?
And so I put it on my timeline.
Okay.
Because I wanted to just see what would happen.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to pop over to Age and see what...
Yeah, you'll see. But I just wanted to do it because I wanted to see what would happen. Because a lot of people were making jokes about R. Kelly and thought it was funny. But when I posted Paul Wall, people didn't think it was as funny.
Really? Why?
Yeah, you tell me. I don't know. It didn't turn out too well. I think you've seen my post,
Well,
right?
sort of, but I kind of couldn't... Well, I'm like...
It was a lot going on. There was people telling me, why did you have to post Paul Walker? And I'd be like, well, R. Kelly
Because
was
he's dead? Is that why people...
that was one of the reasons, but I mean, it to me it was a little, people was tripping a little, like it was
People
a
I
big
know
deal.
are pissed about R. Kelly, the R. Kelly documentary, but I haven't... I mean, I can't quite...
I'm kind of more on the thing, if you date an underage person, you do. I don't mean... the logistics of it, whether you did more than this guy did, you both still dated little girls. It's just
So what do people do? What's the disagreement?
I just don't think they like. I think people like Paul Walker more than R. Kelly is what it came down to.
Yeah.
And I think some people didn't like the fact that it was Paul Wall and they seen it and it's true and they're just kind of like, well, why Paul Wall? You know, it was just excuses for Paul Wall.
Oh, okay. Okay.
When you have a chance, you can go in there, you can kind of look, and you'll see what I'm saying. And some people got into it with each other over it, and it was like, to me, it's like it was no different. Some of you was making fun of R. Kelly.
People were. Well, I'm seeing about R. Kelly is. I guess people feel like he hasn't been held accountable. People feel like he got off too easy.
You know how many people get off too easy for that?
No, the documentary. In the documentary.
Yeah, well, he has. I'm not saying he hasn't. But, I mean, there's a lot of stars that got off easy.
Not legally. The disagreement, people feel like he's... I guess people are pissed at, like, the people being interviewed about him. I mean, people feel like he should be... That's, I guess, what they're... That nobody in the documentary condemned him, I think.
That's the whole thing. They did condemn him. That's why everybody's mad at him.
Okay.
They did kind of condemn him. I don't know how much more condemning you could do.
Really? Okay. Well, like for me, I mean, I don't watch.
But me, I don't know how much you are into R&B and music. I mean, but we've all known this about R. Kelly for years.
Even I knew that.
So it's kind of like one of them things to me is, I guess since they made a documentary, it made it, I guess, more than one.
So is the problem that it doesn't show it enough in the documentary?
The problem is, it's just like when you promote something. It's just like the old, media type thing. When something is promoted, it becomes more relevant than it was when it's not. We all knew R. Kelly was like that.
Yeah.
But since they did a documentary about him and all the people are talking about him now.
So did they not show it in the documentary?
Like what they talked to. I mean, they said what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they pretty much said what he did.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, most of us know that he was like this, and it's not like nothing new.
Right.
But I don't know.
Well, shit, back then, I mean, he put girls in, like, films and stuff. I mean...
See, that's what I'm saying. Pretty much, they're rehashing the same stuff that's already been said. Yeah. But since it's being said again, and now we got a whole new generation of viewers now.
That's right.
And so everybody is more, a little bit different now, so... They're seeing it now, and they're like, "Oh my god!"
Oh, well, that's a big thing because now people have kids that are listening to it.
But it's like most people our age, if you were born and you were a teenager within the 90s, you already knew you knew about R. Kelly. It was a known fact. I mean, they were making fun of him. I don't know if you ever watched the Dave Chappelle show or if you know who Dave Chappelle is.
I know who Dave Chappelle is, yeah.
Back when he had his show, which was early 2000, he was making fun of R. Kelly all the time.
Well, that was, people made, like people knew about Cosby for years.
Yeah, but you know what? I've never seen nobody really like.
No, they did. My friend Sam. Oh shit! Didn't we, remember Samson? You know Samson.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, but I've never seen it on TV. People making fun of Bill Cosby about that situation. I've never seen it until he started getting in trouble.
Well, yeah.
I've never seen it.
Before. Well,
I've seen them talk about it, but I've never seen...
Well, the one comedian made it public, but it had been... What Samson says is, like, people have been talking about it in the comedy circuit for a really long time. And my friend that ran a cat house in Hollywood in the 70s said everybody knew then.
Yeah, but with R. Kelly...
Richard Pryor used to come to her place.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's nice. That's
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
That's
It's my
cool.
friend Chris. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everybody's been talking about R. Kelly for forever. They talk about him peeing on people.
Yeah.
You know, they've always made that joke, and it's always been a joke, but now I guess it's not a joke anymore because, I don't know, they rehashed it. Like you said, all the people that he molested or whatever he did to him, they made the show. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's tricky. I mean, shit. What was it? I remember. Well, that came up. Oh, man, what was the film? Yeah, I remember that came up with like another film about, you know, another film about rappers, and it was brought up like, well, what about you know, what about how they treated women? And I feel like if you're gonna make if you have a choice in what. I mean, filmmakers have a choice. You know, I just feel like, for me, I'm not, you know, if you're going to make a film about something, I don't know. For me, I'm not really that interested. I didn't find it that interesting to be like, okay, well, why didn't your film have this? I mean, I feel like it's more important that the real problem is women, and like black women, not getting opportunities to make their own films and tell the stories. Mm-hmm. I mean, so yeah, I mean, instead of like, I think that's a lot more important. And for instead of like other people, you know, people have their own stories to tell, and so so, you know, and that's just, well, shit, you know, I mean, God, we're getting deep tonight. Going back to the conversation about how we learn to be empathetic and understand each other. I mean, you know, that's why we need to try and support independent filmmakers and artists and everything. I mean, because those are stories that need to get out there, and yeah, that's how we learn, and that's what makes our world that's just so much more interesting and meaningful, and yeah. I mean, you know, so yeah, women directors, y'all, and so yeah, I mean, that is when I was very excited today. I finally met Mandy Carter. Oh my God, it was awesome, and you know, just somebody who's been in social justice for 50 years, and I was talking with her about archiving, you know, because what I say, like, to her, and, you know, I mean, just to any elder like that, and like, let me archive your stuff, and, you know, so I was explaining about because now people talk about like digitizing, which is just like scanning a bunch of shit and putting it out there. I just like somebody like Mandy will have like a bunch of correspondence and paperwork, so, you know, so to archive it, you go through it and you find like keywords, and you know, so then that goes on the net, and so then somebody who's doing research will be able to get that information and find out about that.
Right.
And so that's just something I'm really, you know, get this stuff out. And, you know, I was also saying, like, I don't care, you know, I was also saying, like, I don't care. I was like, I don't care whether young people come to my films particularly. I mean, I would come to my events. Like, I was asked that, I didn't interview somebody today, and I didn't put it that way. They were like, he was saying, well, why should youth come? And I was like, well, okay, well, we're doing a family screening on Saturday, but everybody that everybody that comes to my events, each person is valuable. It's valuable to me, and nobody's more important than anyone else. But, I was saying, like, look, I mean, I didn't really know who Mandy was until recently, and I'm old, so I'm like, who cares about? It's not just important. It's important for everybody to learn stuff, not just young people.
Right.
And yeah, she was a little bit like, "What? You don't care about them?" and yeah. So I was explaining where I was going. It was, I'm about that. So, but yeah, part of one of the reasons, the important thing, like we're doing the family screening on Saturday with the Vallejo NAACP, and the idea of that is that hopefully that families will come is for NAACP members to share their experiences with their grandchildren and children. And so I'm like, I don't care about young people. But not when it comes to, my film, most of my stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, I just can't get, everybody, it's so great to me that people come to my stuff, that anybody does. And it's great. And they're all just very, very precious to me.
Nice. All right.
All right. Okay, so, we will be back in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yes.
2 weeks, we'll be back.
Yes. Okay. Is duck soup tomorrow?
No, we're not doing duck soup until February 7th.
Oh.
Abe wants to do it.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll explain it to you later. I can't say it on film.
So, all right. Good night, everybody, and thank you. And I will see you all at the Biodiversity Symposium.
Yes.
Yes.